Hey guys, welcome back to the Bulwark. I am Sam Stein, managing editor for the site. I'm pleased to be joined by JVL. As always, before we start this, please click that subscribe button. We need you to subscribe. It's good for you. It's good for your health. That's what we tell everyone. Just click, small little click. All right, today, setup here is I've been kind of in this weird rabbit hole of internet searching, and I was going down the YouTube hole, and I found a bunch of old Pete Hegseth clips from his time prior to the Trump era, when he was just this up and coming conservative voice on veterans issues. Yeah, exactly. And he was not even a Fox News host. And I was just clicking on these YouTubes, and this one video in particular just stood out for me because the context of it. It's 2015. Donald Trump has just broken out on the political scene. Everyone's sort of like fascinated and kind of weirded out by it and confused a little bit too. And Donald Trump does an interview with Chuck Todd, in which Chuck Todd asks him how and from whom he gets his military advice. Take a look at what Trump says, and then specifically take a look at what Pete Hegseth says in response to what Trump says.
Who do you talk to for military advice right now?
Well, I watch the shows. I mean, I really see a lot of great, when you watch your show and all of the other shows, and you have the generals, and you have certain people that you like.
But is there somebody, is there a go-to for you?
Probably there are two or three.
Every presidential candidate has a go-to.
Probably there are two or three. I mean, I like Bolton. I think he's, tough cookie, knows what he's talking about. Jacobs is a good guy.
You mean Ambassador John Bolton?
Yes.
You mean Colonel Jack Jacobs?
Colonel Jack Jacobs is a good guy, and I see him on occasion.
Joining me now, Pete Hegseth, the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America and a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Pete, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I got to admit, when we have people like you on, many of the retired colonels and generals and people that we have on Fox, I always learn things from them. So what's so wrong about that? Or is it wrong?
Oh, boy, there are a lot of folks. Hey, a lot of folks. And he even mentioned Ambassador Bolton. I mean, Jack Keane, Ralph Peters. I mean, when I watch them, I learn a ton. So it's not to say that you don't learn, but you wouldn't want a top-tier presidential candidate getting all of their military advice from watching Meet the Press. There's a lot more nuance. There's a lot more detail. And what people love about Donald Trump is he's straightforward. He's blunt. He tells it like it is. I want to beat ISIS. They shouldn't get oil. I totally get that, but I think if I'm glimpsing inside their campaign, they're probably assembling some generals right now to bring into a room to brief Donald Trump about some of these particular nuances. Because at the end of the day, foreign policy and national security is not about TV shows. It's a complex web of relationships.
All right, that stood out to me for obvious reasons, primarily because Pete Hegseth, TV show host, is now going to be our head of defense.
Say it. Yeah, it sounds just as ridiculous when you vocalize it, doesn't it?
It does. But then the John Bolton line also was great. A little tough cookie. What do you think, JVL?
Tough cookie. He knows what he's talking about. If I could just, I'm sorry, if you could indulge me.
Sure.
So we could flash forward by 4 years, when Donald Trump says I'm going to quote from the Wire Service article, Trump, in a string of biting Twitter comments, called Bolton's book, quote, a compilation of lies and made-up stories, all intended to make me look bad. Many of the ridiculous statements he attributes to me were never made, pure fiction, just trying to get even for firing him like the sick puppy he is. Trump called Bolton, quote, a disgruntled, boring fool who only wanted to go to war, never had a clue, was ostracized, and happily dumped. What a dope. Alternatively, he's a tough cookie who really knows what he's talking about because I saw him on the shows.
Yeah, I think Bolton's mistake was he should have just stayed on Meet the Press or something like that. Could have had more influence.
I mean, we really are in a truth, post logic, post rational world where this is barely even merits bringing up, right? People, you say, well, wait a minute, hold on. He said that Bolton was one of the two voices that he thought were worth listening to. Right. And now, he turns on Bolton. And now here we are in 2024, and Bolton is actively lobbying Republicans on the Hill to try to stop Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard from getting their appointments.
And then on top of that, the guy who was warning against going to TV generals for your advice is the one being,
yes. You wouldn't want, it's not about the TV shows. You wouldn't want your top tier presidential candidate getting his advice from TV generals on Meet the Press. However, if you're getting his advice from TV generals on Fox and Friends Weekend,
That's different.
That's a different kettle of
Yeah,
fish.
totally different category. Do you think Pete Hegseth knows the history here? He saw what happened to Bolton. I'm always kind of curious about how these people think they're going to kind of ride the bull. Or do they know that you just get like a year or two and then that's it? You're thrown.
You know, I think there are two types. They're the type who think this time it'll be different.
Yeah, okay.
Because he sees how special I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so
I know I had the formula that they didn't have.
Right.
Yeah.
Mike Pence was always a stooge and a tool. Like, he didn't know what was going on, but
Mike Pence lasted more than most.
I know. And then there are the type, I think, who decide that they can do it because they don't have a gag reflex. Right. Their gag reflex is so long gone that, they're going to be okay because they'll get in there and they'll just maneuver. Like, if you're a Matt Schlapp,
who do you put in that category? The Schlapps?
The Schlapps and Michael Anton and Bannon and Corey, right? Where they understand that if the chief wants to take you to the woodshed and dump you and pretend he doesn't know you, so long as you don't take it personally and you never turn on him, you're always going to be allowed back in eventually. You just have to be reliable. And I think that Hegseth is probably in that camp. If I had to guess.
It's possible. He's never been in the Trump immediate orbit like this, so it will be new for him. But
also new having a job where he's responsible for more than 5 people.
That's
I'm sorry. Yeah. Can we just pause for a moment?
Right, because this actually does get to me. Obviously the sexual assault stuff is deeply problematic and troubling and deserves to be taken seriously in consideration of nomination. But it also is true that this is a 3 million person entity that is one of the great bureaucracies of modern time, and putting someone who's never managed anything atop of it is ludicrous. It's just, you would never do it in any other industry.
If Pete Hegseth was a great human being,
right,
and a super smart guy whose track record was sterling and whose views of the world all lined up absolutely perfectly with mine, personally, JVL's, he would still be one of the most preposterous nominations ever to lead the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
Because this is a 3 million person logistics operation. It's the longest logistics train on the planet.
Yeah.
Right? Where you've got to be thinking about everything. You're thinking about time horizons that are 2 days out. You're thinking about time horizons that are 20 years out, while you're thinking about weapon systems that are going to take decades to develop. And the idea that you could drop some kid in there who's never managed or overseen anything, doesn't know how bureaucracies work or how to deal with it's the craziest fucking thing I've ever heard.
And you know who knows this? Pete Hegseth knows this, because let's play the second clip where he clearly is mocking Donald Trump for the idea that you would turn to a TV general for advice.
They're going to have to walk back a little bit from this idea that he gets it from the political shows. In fact, Shannon, I'm down here in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. My group, Concerned Vets for America, is doing veterans and military family town halls across the country. We did one with Rubio and Rand. We're doing one with Cruz later this month. We were down here with Jeb Bush tonight. And I actually asked him this question. I believe we've got a sound, but I asked him where he got his military advice from. Certain candidate recently said in an interview over the weekend that he gets his military advice from watching shows. Where do you get your military advice from?
I get my military advice from a really dedicated group of young policy men and women that are serving in the campaign. I'm not going to fall into the trap of having, I watch Meet the Press and I get my foreign policy advice from that. I think it needs to be a little more organized than that.
He's chuckling there. He gets it. He's in on it. He knows it.
Yeah.
And now he's the guy.
You know what, though? I got to ask you something.
Sure.
I look at this and I think he didn't even have a gag reflex back then. He was just taking the angle. Like, we all think oh, how did Pete Hegseth change? I don't think he changed. That guy is so plastic that what we were seeing then is the same guy as now.
I don't know.
Just looking to get up the greasy pole. And
I agree.
That Neocon Central was the way to run it.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree with that. He's kind of, because there's other clips in my weird search of YouTube where he was talking about, the Trump foreign policy is just like the Obama foreign policy. It's leading from behind. It's like all these world catastrophes happening and you don't want to assert American leadership. Because Pete Hegseth came from the school of thought that it was outward American militarism and you would bend the world to your will. And now, of course, it's a different Pete Hegseth, and that's because Donald Trump is running the party.
It's amazing. You could see he and little Marco be doing a little, project for a new American century, backdoor. Now, of course, you couldn't see that because neither of them have any convictions whatsoever.
No, definitely not. All right. Well, if I turn up any more Hegseth stuff, I'll come straight to JVL for some reaction. But man, thank you for joining us. We'll have plenty more. And as always, please subscribe to the Bulwark. Really appreciate it. JVL, talk to you later, bud.
Good luck, America.